we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And it is 10 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, which means, can only mean one thing. If it's Monday, 10 a.m., everything stops automatically. Pencils down, put that coffee pot down.
Conjuring up conspiracy theories, stop.
Everything just stop. But forget about that boiled egg. It's going to get cold, but eat it later. So this is time for our joint live stream, and it's already mid-September. So we're right heading towards the grim.
It's still a short sleever. It's still
the last of the short sleeves. Yeah. So a couple of things I just want to talk about just before we get on to the more substantive issues is this there's a kind of something like a dam has burst on the issue of boycotting Israeli athletes, Israelis competing in all kinds of sporting events, any kind of competitions, and it's the difference between this and what happened in the case of the Russians is that this is a ground up undertaking. It's a spontaneous thing. I mean, people are just simply expressing their anger at Israelis, at just Israelis competing in various sporting events. Now, I think you and I agree that it's wrong. I don't think it's right to punish athletes or artists for the actions of their government. I mean, that's not what they do. I mean, they devote their lives to their craft, to their art. Why should they be blamed for the actions of their government? But nonetheless, something like a dam has burst, because this didn't used to be the case. Ever, and it was never the case that people would come on the stage at anywhere, even at the Emmys or at a concert, and then would just simply denounce Israeli actions. And what happened in Spain over the weekend, a cycling competition just simply had to be scrapped because people just simply were the crowds are just out of control. They refused to allow this competition to go on. So this is quite a striking development, because I think now this is going to be a chain reaction. There's going to be more and more of these staged protests. There'll be almost any award ceremony, any kind of competitions. Right away, people are going to say, we don't want the Israelis here.
Well, I'm against particularly when it comes to these sporting events and cultural events in general. A sporting event, that is a choice, your choice, if you want to watch it or not. Okay, if you want to watch it on TV or go there. The overriding concern I have is there a rough consensus that we should allow politics to invade these sports and cultural spaces? I mean, if there's a consensus, then let's figure out what the rules are. But don't be selective, okay? Don't be selective.
Right.
And George is absolutely right when it comes to Belarus and Russia. It's the top down. I mean, people in Munich want to listen to Rachmaninoff. Why are you saying they can't do that?
Right.
Okay. Well, what government organ? What Ministry of Propaganda is doing this? Okay. It's music. People like it. Do they associate it with Russia? Maybe. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just like the music. Okay. Or when it comes to particularly gymnastics, I don't watch any sports, but ice skating and gymnastics is just like like angels in the air. It's amazing to watch. Okay. I don't look at it because she's Israeli or American or Russian. I don't do that. Okay. So just make up your mind, everyone. Stop being hypocrites. Okay. Because that's where we are right now. It's just somebody in authority just makes this decision for the rest of us. And now we have the reverse, where we have this growing groundswell. Maybe they should make the rules. Okay. How are we going to do this?
Right.
Because it took this for us to actually have a meaningful conversation. George and I have covered this extensively. Okay. And they work for Putin. Well, there's no evidence of these people doing it. Even if they did, so what?
Right.
Okay. But now it's Western hypocrisy that just comes flying right back at them. And I hope it's excruciatingly hard to make these people think logically. Okay,
Right.
so I take my stand. I do not believe in boycotting athletes from any country from participating in a sport that they have devoted their entire life to. Sorry, that's where I stand.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think that it is just ridiculous to punish people for the actions of their governments. I mean, they didn't make these decisions, and even if they approve of the actions of their government, it still has nothing to do with anything because that's not what they're there for. They're there for
What does
because
that have to do
they're
with
the best
wrestling
in the
and
world.
basketball? What's that have to
Right.
do with wrestling and basketball?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. And that's the thing. And what this has shown by the fact that suddenly authorities are saying, "Hey, well, we can't do this. We can't really, treat these Israeli athletes or Israeli artists in this way." But how come you never had any problems when it came to the Russian? I mean, this was outrageous. And incidentally, in the case of the Russians, this has been going on for years and years and years, and this has long predated the 2022. So this is, I mean, remember when, back, in the Olympics, they came up with this whole phony baloney thing that the Russians were uh, juicing, that they were
Doping.
state sanctioned, exactly, state sanctioned doping, and they never came up with any evidence for this. It was
Well,
all entirely with this
there was a
statement. One
turncoat.
person who
One person.
one
A
person who made
turncoat.
this claim, and they used this opportunity to boom. They just simply said, they banned the athletes.
And just to back up what I was saying, I think there should be an international consensus. But in fact, there's a domestic consensus in Russia. Do you think the Russian government likes to be slighted by that, by large international organizations that they contribute money to? No, they've made it clear. Look, these people, the powers that be, they've outvoted us. They threaten expulsion or all that. Individual citizens, you have a right to go because it's up to you. Yes, if you went there and you wanted to represent Russia, in this case, it can't happen. But you can go for yourself and we'll be just as proud of you. It's such an adult approach to it all, okay?
Right, right.
Instead of this infantile approach,
Yeah.
they're throwing your nose up in the air. As we pointed out, George, particularly for the Olympics, I mean, young people, their entire life up until they're like 18 or 20, their whole life goes around a couple of weeks
Right.
in 1 year.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And they start at the age of 3. Well, basically, they have no childhood, no anything, no fun in anything. I mean, it's just devote their whole lives to this. But what they now do with the Russians is they put a lot of hurdles for them to take part. So you get the Russians send a team at, I think, at the Paris Olympics, very very small team. I think because they place so many hurdles before they can get anyone in there, and then they're not allowed to be called the Russian Federation. They don't have a flag. They don't have the national anthem. It's
And,
total humiliation.
yeah,
Absolute utter humiliation that they have to endure just in order to be able to compete, but they compete as individuals, and that's the Olympics. Same thing goes on even in these tennis tournaments. Yes, they're allowed to compete, but they're not allowed to say they're from Russia. So every time you see a Russian name, and then where's this from? Oh, that's it. Just someone from nowhere. Just boom, just popped up out of nowhere. So it's an absolute humiliation. And then of course the worst of all was when they punished the artists, and the soprano Netrebko, and then of course Gergiev. Totally ridiculous, and
well, particularly since they were welcomed artists because of their art
because
before.
they're out, yeah. And what was so disgusting is that you have the media cheering this on. They say, "Oh yeah, fantastic." So, for instance, Netrebko has now been brought back in. She's going to be in the season of Puccini in at the Royal Opera House, and there was the Guardian saying, "Oh, this is really terrible." That's not, but yeah, but she's actually come out explicitly condemned what Russia did in Ukraine. She did it. Oh, well, she only did it once. I mean, yeah, frankly, in order to be able to perform, you have every day, several times a day, you have to say, I totally condemn what Russia's doing. I really, really hate Putin. And then, all right, well, now you can perform. But I don't know about tomorrow night. You're going to have to do this again the first thing tomorrow morning.
Just be consistent, everyone. And and this is what this groundswell is actually all about: is the consistency. Ethnic cleansing is condemned everywhere in the world except for one place. Okay,
Right.
unprovoked unilateral acts of military aggression against another country is absolutely forbidden under international law, except for, see,
Right.
people. This is some. I mentioned this yesterday. Is that George and I have had these opinions for a very long time. Okay, it's just not sudden, and to suddenly see that maybe we're not such a tiny, tiny minority anymore. It's kind of gratifying. Is that George and I have been talking about the conflict in Ukraine, which started in 2014. Okay,
Right.
slowly but surely people catch up. And then, of course, there are a few people that like to grab the flag and lead the parade, which, okay, whatever.
Right.
But
Right. No, that's right. It's all. It's a.
it's just that this is something that people see, this glaring double standards, okay? And people are getting sick and tired of it because it doesn't make their lives any better, okay? It doesn't, okay? And this extends all the way into every kind of element of life where privileged individuals get off, they're protected, they become even more wealthy off of the misery of others. COVID, for a good example. Okay. No, this is I don't know if you want to talk about it later, but this march in the UK over the weekend. Okay, that was.
That's right. Yeah.
Wake up! Wake up! We're here. Stop
Yes.
ignoring us.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. But what is, just going back to what we're talking about, the case of Israel, is that all of these protests are, from the bottom. They're coming from the ground up. In the case of Russia and Ukraine, I mean, what was remarkable, that, hey, where are the big protests? There's no one's protesting, and it's never happened. You have all these Ursula von der Leyen spluttering and foaming at the mouth, Boris Johnson foaming at the mouth, and the rest of them. But it's just the elites. There's no where are the protests outside the Russian embassy? Where are the marches? Hands off Ukraine. Nothing. There was never that. But what's happened here in the case of Israel is this is spontaneous. I mean, this is just really, people are absolutely infuriated.
Well, and it's interesting because taking a kind of longer view of things, I haven't seen anything like this. There was something similar with the lead up to the invasion of Iraq, and then we had in Europe the anti-missile protests. I mean. And these were all organic, and so finally we're getting something. People are finding their feet again, because your average person doesn't go out on a march.
No.
Okay, they just don't. As a friend of mine was pointing out to me, I don't know if you're going to like this or not, George, but I was a very small child in the 1960s, and we saw all of this hippie culture, alternative culture on TV, which of course my parents were like, "Oh my God, that's awful," but I never participated in it, and I never knew anyone that did. We were all observers to all of this. Okay, of course, we were forced with remember the bell bottoms. Oh my God, the fashion was awful.
Right.
And I mean, that was at Kmart and at Sears. Okay, it wasn't like an alternative place where you bought food, and so people witness so much. The vast majority witness cultural change as an observer. They're not the
no, that's right. I mean,
every once in a while, an issue hits where people say, "I've had enough." This is emblematic of how you're treating the rest of us in the world. Okay, it's a truly remarkable moment. Again, I'm not going to name all the names. People know who I'm talking about. But I have to say, George, considering how grim and dark the world is, at least the way the way we see the world, we've presented it. I feel we're getting some justification here. Finally.
Well, yeah, but that of course does raise this interesting question. I mean, with Israel becoming as hated as it is, how can it go on? How it can it? I don't think it can go on just like this because he's
Yeah. Oh, it's good. Go on. Marco Rubio will take your passport
well.
away
That's
from
it.
you.
That's where
Oh,
the Americans now
oh,
think.
wow. These people they have no limits. They're drowning in their hypocrisy. Okay. It's just amazing watching this happen. Wait, well, I believe in free speech, but don't you hold a sign to boycott Israel? I mean, come on. You don't have to be particularly intelligent to say, hey, this is not right. This is not right.
That's right. So that's the two odd aspects of this. First of all, Israel becoming really hated. Now Netanyahu, he probably doesn't care. Ben Gvir, he doesn't care. Smotrich doesn't care. But ordinary Israelis do. I mean, they don't like being hated. Nobody likes being hated. That has to have an impact. That has to feel, hey, we really don't like being hated wherever we go. It's like now the moment somebody hears somebody speaking Hebrew or speaking with a thick Israeli accent, they suddenly get berated. This had an impact on South Africa. I mean, South Africa suddenly we're hated all over the world. It starts off when we no longer can take part in sporting events. We can no longer take part in every kind of cultural event. We're just out there completely isolated. Now, some people in South Africa, some of the hardline Afrikaners, they said, "Well, say what? Yeah, we didn't care."
But the
But
difference
most
is,
South Africans did care.
but what compounds it. I agree with the analogy, but go back and what you remember about apartheid South Africa. First of all, we didn't have the internet. Okay, we had network news. So in America, you had three major networks. There's no CNN then. Okay, and what did we see? A week-old footage of a riot in some township or something, or of course, whites only, blacks only. We got snippets of it. Okay, we got it on our phone now.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and that is the biggest difference. And I'm not saying they're comparable. They were both are disgraceful, but different magnitudes, obviously too. But you're right.
Chomsky, I think, has always said the Israeli apartheid is much worse than South African apartheid. I
Yep.
don't remember exactly the argument, but I remember that's his argument that what Israel is doing is much worse than what
Yes.
South
Yes. Yes.
Africa was doing.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm sure that the people of Gaza would agree.
yeah, I think so too. But that's why I have to think it has to have eventually an impact on Israeli society because I don't think they can go on being hated in this way. I mean, it's like just physically attacked wherever you go. Just as goes a tourist somewhere and you suddenly get physically attacked, which is happening, and and then of course with America now completely going off on a totally different on a tangent. I mean, completely out of step with the rest of the world. That's going to have an impact as well. That somehow you're completely out of step with the rest of humanity.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, one of the most powerful things that the United States has had, it started in the 20th century and still is applicable in some to one degree or another, is its soft power. When I lived in communist Eastern Europe in the 1980s, the American soft power was enormous and very, very effective. That's no longer the case now. That's no longer the case. I mean, again, people that get activated. I'm not going to say, become aware. And then they see, oh, that was the United States again vetoed this. Again, Netanyahu comes again. He's,
right.
and then people are learning about the ICC and things like that, which they never, George, even months ago, people in America never even knew anything about that.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So this
Yeah.
is a consciousness thing, and it will have consequences. In the next, depending on what happens, or let's say the current trajectory is maintained. Um, uh, I'm sure you've seen it. There are these groups that follow who takes APEC money. Okay,
Right,
and so
right.
go bring up a sign, the candidate's name and how much money they take from APEC. That's going to start making an impact, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also making this whole thing. We've all got so inured to every American politician. They go to Israel. That's where you spend your holidays. You spend your weekends. You go to Israel, and then you put on your yarmulke, and then you go to the
Hug the
Western
wall.
Wall.
Hug the
Yeah, and then
wall.
you do all of that. And this is the ritual they all go through. And you think, why? Why do they? I mean, is everyone obligated to go into a Catholic church? Take Holy Communion. It's ridiculous. Does Netanyahu do this? Does he go to a church and say, "Oh, I have to show my respect to the Roman Catholic Church. I'll take Holy Communion." I mean, it's total
Well,
nonsense.
particularly, I would, from what I understand, the Wailing Wall doesn't mean jack to Netanyahu. It's a wall that he brings people to. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's, and I think people are starting to comment on this. Is what kind of a pathetic, contemptible, abject performance by American politicians that they have to go there and do that. Why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, well, wait,
You represent the United States, and you
we
come
talked
with
about it. We talked about it yesterday. Marco Rubio goes to Israel to talk about the fallout of the attack on Qatar. Well, why didn't he go to Doha? I mean, you go to Israel first.
You're right.
I mean,
Yes, yes.
explain that to me.
That's right. That's right. So, so now speaking of the Trump administration, we haven't talked very much yet about the message that was sent out by President Trump, and it was an interesting message because he sent out the truth, but the truth was addressed to all of the governments of the world, and it was essentially
It
he's
was like a papal encyclical.
exactly. But what he was saying is, get off my back with these bloody sanctions. You've been going on and on and on at me for months and months. It's now what 8 months. You've been going. So get off my back, and you do something. And so let's just take a look at this. Quite. Uh,
Yeah, I'm going to need my magnifying glass here.
yeah, maybe so. Yes, let's see. Me. Okay, all right. Let me first go find it. That shouldn't be hard. Okay. Okay. Here we are. So here is a letter sent by President Trump to all NATO nations and the world. And he says, I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have
Which
agreed.
includes Turkey, everyone. Remember.
That's right. When all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing. And when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. As you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%. And the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. Just say when. I believe that this, plus NATO as a group placing 50% to 100% tariffs on China, to be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended, will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. And then he goes on. China has a strong control and even grip over Russia, and those powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It would never have started if I was president. It is Biden's and Zelensky's war. I am only here to help stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. 7,118 lives lost last week alone. Crazy. If NATO does as I say, the war will end quickly and all of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time and the time, energy, and money of the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Um, so,
So what is this? It's you first doctrine, the doctrine of you first.
well, that's right. It's that it very much is, but it's actually a very
It's very smart for a
it's a
change.
very shrewd move. But in a way, it was always obvious that this is where it was going to head to. The notion that Trump was just going to slap 50, 100, 500% tariffs on imports from China and India, while the Europeans would just happily go on doing business as normal, yeah, getting their oil from India and continuing to do business with China. In other words, they would actually be picking up the slack. So the breakdown of trading relations between China and the United States as a result of this 100% or 500% tariffs would redound to the advantage of Europe. And so, yeah, great, nice. We're going to, stimulate our trade. And now they're sort of, hey, we weren't expecting this. How could they not have been expecting this? Of course, Trump was going to say this. Okay, fine, we'll impose these tariffs, but you have to do the same, exactly the same tariffs as we're going to impose, and you've got to cut yourself off completely from all Russian fossil fuels. Good? Is that a deal? Ready when you are, as he puts it.
Well, the reason why I interjected real quickly, and Turkey is a member of NATO, he didn't address it to the European Union, which is significant.
Right.
He addressed it to NATO. There's
Yeah.
no way in the world the Turks are going to do this. Like later days. It's ridiculous.
No
Okay?
one's going to,
Nobody.
even U.S. allies such as Hungary. Hungary cannot do it. Hungary is
Again,
completely dependent on oil and gas coming by pipeline from Russia. Hungary can't afford to make any kind of changes. So it's just an absurdity, and he knows it. And that's his good friend Viktor Orban. So this isn't going to happen. But the Europeans are in this. Well, we can't really do this. Why can't you do this? Well, because we're an export driven economy. We rely on exports.
oh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
should have thought about that earlier.
If the Chinese retaliate, that's going to completely drive us into a recession. Imagine Germany won't be able to export its products to China. You can't, you can't do that. And it was always so ridiculous to think that Trump would go for it. What does surprise me is why it took Trump so long to figure this out. That this is really the way to answer, because they've been
Well, yeah, but
hammering on at him for 9 months now.
they send an embassy every few weeks of the European leaders as if their own home countries aren't spiraling down the toilet. Okay, I think he's just shown he's lost his patience. I truly believe that Trump, in the way he sees it, I met everybody halfway. I did the best I could. Okay.
Right.
And that's it. And George and I, for I think a number of weeks now, we've surmised that he just wants to see how events are going to just unfold in Ukraine, and it'll take care of itself. Because this is something that does not interest him in the slightest. Of course, he liked the Anchorage thing; it was a lot of fun, photo ops, for his scrapbook
Right.
and all, and his big library that will be like a mausoleum. But I think he's had it. Okay, and it doesn't mean it's over, everyone, because the
No, no, no.
Europeans can escalate. This is George and I talked at great length about these drones, these basically drones you can buy in a store that don't have any munitions on them. I mean, and NATO showed how unprepared it is. I mean, they had to call in a plane. Can you get here from Italy? Hurry! And they missed the show.
Right, right. No, that's right. But what's interesting, of course, is that having with Trump having made this move, little Lindsay, Lady Lindsay, as some people call
Lady
him,
Lindsay.
said, "Okay, well, I think I'm going to get around this." Because I'm going to attach this tariff thing to an appropriations bill, the Pentagon appropriations. So here is a story in Politico. GOP Russia hawks have a new plan to outmaneuver isolationists. The Republican House and Senate sponsors of punishing sanctions legislation against Russia have settled on a new strategy, attaching the measure to the coming bill to keep the federal government open. Time is of the essence, says Lindsey Graham and Brian Fitzpatrick. And then he goes on, citing Trump's pledge Saturday to enact major sanction on Russia. He didn't make a pledge to enact major sanction on Russia when NATO countries stopped purchasing oil from Moscow and levy tariffs on China. Graham and Fitzpatrick characterized the president's vow and their legislation as a joint action with Europe. And
It's
then, you know,
completely out of touch.
totally out of
Completely.
touch. And Next week, the lawmaker said they will urge colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join us in advancing this legislation. And so those they said that, and here it says Trump finally wants to put the squeeze on Russia. Now comes the hard part. Oh, that is a hard part, and the hard part is that the Europeans are just not going to do this, and
They're not going to do it because they can't do
they
it.
can't do it. That's right. Then so it says. The US president told EU officials this week that he wanted to impose this. Such a move would go against the EU's core principles, particularly after European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen reiterated her opposition to tariffs, insisting that tariffs are taxes on domestic consumers. Slapping tariffs on India, with whom Brussels is nearing a major trade deal, and on China, to which its open economy is heavily exposed, would amount to colossal acts of self harm. Yeah, colossal acts of self
Yeah,
harm.
well, Lady Graham,
Yes,
he loves Ukraine so much he's willing to gut the Europeans. Probably does.
that's
Looks like
right.
it. Why not?
And here they're quoting this some senior policy fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. We don't do tariffs. We are a trading bloc. We are exporters. Exports are the engine of the EU economy. It's our DNA. This is simply a way for the Trump administration to make an unrealistic demand from partners. The partners will say no because there is no way on earth that the EU is going to impose tariffs, especially at that level on China and India, and then say, okay, so our partners refuse to go forward, and so we cannot move forward. Yeah, that's exactly
That's the
it.
plan.
I mean, can you imagine? I was thinking, oh, they're great. So America is going to basically all its trade with China will grind to a halt, but Europe will continue doing its business, and in fact, will increase its business because now America is no longer doing business with China. So the Europeans will be able to. And now they're surprised that Trump is saying, "Yeah, I don't think that's going to work." So I think that should put, for the time being, at least a dampener on all the talk about sanctions. When are those
Well,
American
George,
sanctions on Russia going to come in,
what, what
kick in?
what happened to security guarantees?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
What happened, everyone? That was like the flavor of the day, wasn't it?
That's right. That's right.
All those security guarantees, security guarantees.
That's
Okay,
it.
no.
Yeah.
Where'd that go? Where's it gone? Into the
Now,
ether.
what's kind of interesting is that last week, as we know, we had that whole to do with the drones, the drones that floated over Polish territory, and the Poles got very excited about this and invoked Article 4 Many people don't even know that there is such a thing as Article
I
4.
think we should just call it Article Zoom call.
Exactly, Article 4, which means they all went into a consultation mode. Um, and
Because they haven't been doing that on every other day.
Yeah, and so here is the here's, if you recall, this was Trump who and we talked about this. He made that very cryptic um, uh, truth, which sounded a little bit as if he was skeptical. What's with
Yeah,
Russia violating?
this will go into one of his all-time great truths. Okay, because I really like it. Here we go.
Here we go.
Of course, as George and I discussed yesterday, is
That's
that
right.
take your pick what it means, and that's exactly that. It's cryptic for intentionally. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. But here we go. To be honest, sounds a little skeptical. Here we go. Um, but anyway, and this was Mark Rutte,
Rudy.
who made his blustery statement. And but curiously enough, he says a full assessment of the incident is ongoing. Interestingly, this assessment has been ongoing since last week, and they still haven't seemed to reach any conclusions. And and then it says, "Let me conclude by saying that Russia is waging a dangerous war of aggression against Ukraine that continually targets civilians and civilian infrastructure." And then again, he says, "Full assessment is ongoing." And then later on in the week, we had NATO announcing that it's going to undertake something called Eastern Sentry, a new NATO operation to guard its eastern flank.
I saw this. Don't you usually say in wartime it's the flank because it's not technically war, so it would be the eastern border, but
Yes.
flank gives it a wartime feel, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. Very, very much so. But and this is really what's going on now in Europe. This war fever, which and as we'll take a look in a minute, was very much the theme of Ursula von der Leyen's State of the Union address last week. The war fever. I mean, it was a wartime address.
I'm surprised she didn't wear some kind of uniform
Yeah, I'm surprised as well.
with her
Uh,
riding crop and her black those long black boots.
That's right. Yes,
Throw in
exactly.
an armband just for
She looks.
aesthetic.
She has that look. A kind of terrifying look. I mean, it's like
Yeah, she has a commandant look,
exactly. She has a commandant look, and very much so. She's kind of petite, but that doesn't mean that she's not terrifying.
She can deliver a punch. Okay.
Um, and they go multi-domain activity, and and says that this is Supreme Allied Commander Alexis Grinkevich says that the violation of Poland's airspace is not an isolated incident and impacts more than just Poland. While a full assessment of the incident is ongoing, NATO is not waiting. We are acting.
Okay.
And
I think in between the lines, we're trying to find a way to spin this. Yeah.
exactly. Eastern Sentry and this new approach will deliver even more focused and flexible deterrence and defense where and when needed to protect our people and deter against further reckless and dangerous acts like what occurred earlier this week. And and then here we've said, what are they going to do? Allies have already begun to announce the deployment of forces and capabilities for Eastern Sentry. Denmark will contribute 2 F-16s
Wow. Two.
and an warfare frigate,
One frigate.
air warfare frigate.
Yeah.
France will contribute 3 Rafales,
Three.
and Germany will contribute 4 Eurofighters. Well,
Wow.
this is really promising.
This is awesome. Awesome.
The United Kingdom has also expressed its willingness to support.
Notice they didn't say what.
Nothing committed. Yeah, we're down. Yeah, put us down as a maybe.
Yeah, put it on my tab. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. These forces and more will reinforce existing allied forces and enhance NATO's deterrence and defensive posture where and when needed. So this is very, very exciting. They've now got this Eastern Sentry, and they're kind of moving along with this whatever it is that they're hoping to accomplish by this, even as they have no idea what happened. I mean, they still have no idea. Which I mean, there are all sorts of theories. I mean, and we talked about the theories, and maybe it was something, this electronic warfare that had gone wrong. But the interesting thing was that Belarus had warned Poland about that this is their incoming drones, and I think Belarus was suggesting that this is the electronic warfare. That you're basically you're messing around with with the signals, and I think that's leading to drones deviating from their flight path. And that's one theory. I mean, another theory, maybe the Russians were testing NATO's air defenses. It's a possibility. Maybe an accident. I mean, these things could happen. Russia has said that the range of these drones is, I think, 700 kilometers, and therefore they cannot have been
But
landed
one
in
thing
British territory
is,
because it's beyond 700 kilometers.
okay, as they're trying to figure out what happened, it's irrefutable that the Russians know how they will react. I will leave it at that.
Right.
They
Yeah.
saw their reaction and their reaction time.
Yeah. Yes. Now, Radek Sikorski, whom we often talk about, he gave an interview the other day to the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And in this interview, he seemed to suggest that he would be down for a NATO declaring a no-fly zone in Ukraine. It's very interesting that we got this complete Looney Tunes that come from Poland and the Baltic Chihuahuas. So there he is, talking about a no-fly zone,
And
and
so
the German
when a,
journalists sort of go,
when one NATO plane goes down, what happens?
Article
What
5.
what are you going to do?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because if a no-fly zone were attempted, it would be a violation of Article 1 of the NATO treaty.
Of course he would. Of course, of course, of course. So here's this interview in the august pages of the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And here it is: Wir sollten über eine Flugverbotszone nachdenken. So we need to think about.
Stop swearing at me, George. Stop swearing at me. Okay.
Yes. And so here's, this Frankfurter saying, now, do you now know what the objective of the Russian drones over your territory was? And Sikorski says, so far, there's only speculation. I don't have any details. However, we do know we've had similar incidents several times before involving drones and missiles. However, these were isolated incidents and not on such a massive scale. Therefore, I don't believe it was a coincidence that 19 drones accidentally appeared here at once. So he says, I don't know. Then he suggests that he does know. Our Air Force repelled the threat for 7 hours. So far, we've heard 2 explanations from the Russian government that the drones accidentally crossed the border and that it's impossible for Russian drones to fly that far. If anything, Moscow should at least agree on one version, because both can't possibly be true at the same time. And then he goes, the rumors that they're targeting the airport, through which a large portion of Ukraine's aid is channeled. That was one of the targets. Do you know more about this? But that's very interesting. The question is interesting because the very asking of the question is obvious that Poland is not a neutral party. It's not a silent, disinterested observer. There are rumors that Rezhov Airport, through which a large portion of Ukraine's aid is channeled, was one of the targets. I mean, you'd say, hey, well, if you're actively involved in arming Ukraine, you're not really an innocent party. And he says, I agree with you that these are rumors. What signal should Poland, NATO, and the EU send to Russia in light of this incident? First of all, we should see it as a wake-up call to accelerate our defense preparations, and then so on. Yeah, we've got to improve our air defenses and so on. And then you spoke with President Zelensky and the Ukrainian defense ministry over the weekend. Are there concrete agreements yet? The Ukrainians are currently building 1/3 to half of the drones they use in their own country. They're setting up decentralized factories and so and blah blah. And then here's the point: the head of the Ukrainian presidential office, Andriy Yermak, has proposed a no-fly zone over Ukraine to protect Central and Western Europe. What do you think about that? And Sikorski says, well, we discussed this a year ago when Joe Biden was still the US president. Technically, we as NATO and the EU would be capable of doing that, but it's not a decision that Poland can make alone, but only with its allies. The protection of our population, for example, from falling debris would, of course, be greater if we could combat drones and other flying objects beyond our national territory.
Well, NATO should go into Ukraine.
Exactly. If
Exactly.
Ukraine were to ask us to shoot them down over its territory, that would be to our advantage. If you ask me personally, we should consider it. So there it is. If Ukraine were to ask us to shoot them down over its territory, that would be to our advantage. If you ask me personally, we should consider it.
And when the first Polish jet that goes down, what are you going to do? Why didn't the interviewer ask that question?
No, they never do.
It's an obvious question.
They never do.
Mr. Foreign Minister, what are the risks of doing that? Crickets? See, this is how state media works in the West.
That's right.
Okay?
The funny thing, of course, is that if suddenly there were, shooting going on between Russia and Poland, Radek Sikorski would go back to Oxford and hang out with his friends at Oxford, Boris Johnson, and no doubt his wife, Anne Applebaum, she'd also go to Oxford. Radek Sikorski is one of the worst type of human beings. He's a total chicken hawk, absolutely would never risk his own life over anything. And you just know, we're going to do this, and this. He's going to run 1,000,000 miles. The moment there are any shots fired in his direction. But this is what's kind of interesting because, whenever you read Sikorski or Kaya Kallas, and you really realize that what NATO did in its expansion to the east was to incorporate within it people who want to go to war with Russia. That way, it's not like, we want protection. Please give us protection. No. They want war with Russia. They wanted war with Russia before World War II. You went there and said, we wanted war with Russia then. We want it now. That was the whole point. That's what they want to use NATO for.
And it's a very selective elite capture. We see that you have ambivalence, even dislike about Russia. We're interested in you, okay? It's very selective elite capture, and then the best example is Annalena Baerbock 360. I mean, she's president of the General
She's
Assembly.
president of the General Assembly, and doing a not a terribly impressive job of
Well,
it
she
either.
made it kind of like a Tic Tac video I saw. That was kind of cute. Okay.
She has a certain
I
cute.
mean, I'm an old fashioned guy. I'm very conservative, but she's an embarrassment for smart women, for professional women. Look,
Right.
we had Professor Fitzpatrick on. I mean, that was such an amazing experience. Okay, I mean, it's someone I very much look up to and have learned so much from. And you have this 360 gal. I mean, she's just gallivanting around New York on taxpayer money, making a complete ass out of herself.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry. I don't cut people slack. It's meritocracy. Do your
Right,
job. Do it
right,
well. I don't
right.
care your gender.
But she was,
And you know what?
but she kind
Yeah,
of got into the whole New York scene. I don't know. Did you see
yeah, she did.
the
Yeah,
video of her, and she had a kind of her sort of belly was bare. She was wearing a jacket, and then she kind of turned around a little bit, and you kind of saw the nice flash of flesh just above her jeans. Hey, suddenly she's really got into the whole New York scene routine. This is New York. It's not conservative Germany anymore. Um,
she'd be better off selling cosmetics. Okay.
yeah. Now, interestingly, her party, the Greens, are sinking abysmally.
I need my magnifying. Where are they, Joe?
Where are they?
Where
We
are they
just
in
had
the
an
vault? What? What?
yeah.
Where? What
we-
happened?
That's right. We just had municipal elections in North Rhine-Westphalia, um, which is in the west. It's a big state, and the Alternative for Deutschland party got 15%. Now that's may say, okay, well that doesn't sound all that impressive, but
In
this
the
is
West, it's huge.
it's exactly in the West. The AFD used to have no presence whatsoever. Whatever presence it had was always in the East. So this is the first time that they've really made an impact in the West, and they've got more votes than the Greens. The Annalena Baerbock's Greens are sort of and so that's they've trebled their vote. They used to have 5%. Now it's 15%. That's a significant breakthrough. I mean, that they needed that if they were going to become a national party. They need a breakthrough in the West.
And this is something we have not seen since the advent of the Federal German Republic. This is new.
Right,
This is
right.
new.
That's right. Exactly.
It's no
Um,
back in the day, in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. This was always, well, what is the protest vote going to be? Remember that,
right,
George? Oh, this
right,
is just a
right,
protest. Okay,
right,
this is not a
right,
protest anymore. Okay.
right, right. Yeah. Now, um, now speaking of Germany, we have to.
If we have to.
It's a yes. It's indeed. Um, the kind of I mean, we talked about this before. The kind of belligerent talk you get from Germany these days. That the mask is completely off.
Yeah.
All those years and years of the Bundesrepublik. Oh no, it's complete. No.
Willy Brandt on his knees. Remember?
This is a completely different Germany. No. We just want to be friends with everybody. We're just peace loving. No, yeah, Russia, yeah, we want good relations with Russia. All that. That's all in the past. No. The mask is off. They're openly, German intellectuals, German media, they're openly talking about this war, the coming war with Russia, and without any self consciousness. You say, hey, you're Germans. I mean, it's not that long ago. There are people alive who remember that war, and you're not even bothering to pretend that you're somehow peace loving.
And George, what makes it even worse is that with the American backstop, of course.
With the
Okay.
American back, of course. With the
I
American
mean,
background,
then you humiliate yourself. You talk big,
yeah.
all
Yeah.
hat, no cow.
That's right, exactly. Of course it's the American flag. They don't have the Wehrmacht anymore. I mean that is certainly true. They don't have the Wehrmacht. They don't have that the great military prowess that they once had. So they want to provoke a war that somebody else will fight. Um, So Ursula von der Leyen, she delivered this State of the Union. It's so infuriating that she calls it the State of the Union. I mean, she's an unelected bureaucrat pontificating away about the state of the Union in before a European Parliament that nobody votes for. Nobody ever takes part in these European parliamentary elections. But the tone of her State of the Union was completely, a declaration of war. I think she mentioned, Ukraine 35 times, Russia something like 36 times. I mean, it was, well, none of which has actually anything to do with the EU. So,
Well, they're non-belligerent, George. Remember?
um, here she is. This is the State of the Union. And this war needs to end with a just and lasting peace for Ukraine, because Ukraine's freedom is Europe's freedom.
Here
What
we
does
go.
it
Look
mean?
at that bumper sticker.
Yes,
Bumper
it is. Yeah, yeah.
bumper
It's all
sticker.
written in this bumper sticker way. Yeah. And then she says the images in Alaska were not easy to digest. I don't know what she means by that. But just a few days later, Europe's leaders came to Washington to support President Zelensky and secure commitments. Real progress has been made since then. Just last week, 26 countries of the coalition, the willing, have said they were ready to be part of a reassurance force in Ukraine or participate financially in the context of
Yeah.
a ceasefire.
Well,
But
that's a pretty wobbly statement, which it says patently not true. Okay.
that's right. We will continue to support all diplomatic efforts to end this war. This is such a lie. Europe actually openly said for 3 years that they had no interest in any kind of settlement of this war. They just demanded that Putin come to the negotiating table and capitulate. They're no interest at all. Now, since Trump came to power, they're talking in this, we were in favor of diplomacy and so on. 3 years, they had no interest at all in any diplomacy. But now they have to keep Trump happy. But we have all seen what Russia means by diplomacy. Putin refuses to meet President Zelensky. Last week, Russia launched the largest number of drones and ballistic missiles in a single attack. Yesterday, there was a missile attack on the village of Donetsk, targeting people waiting to pick up their pensions. And then Europe stands in full solidarity with Poland. Putin's message is clear, and our response must be clear too. We need more pressure on Russia to come to the negotiating table. We need more sanctions. We are now working on the 19th package in coordination with partners.
George, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So she's spending so much time on this issue. Everything's fine in the European Union then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything's great.
Okay, good.
The State of the Union is good. We are particularly looking at phasing out Russian fossil fuels faster, the shadow fleet and third countries, and at the same time, we need more support for Ukraine. And then it goes on. This is Europe.
I get it now. She's talking about this because she doesn't want to talk about the State of the Union.
No, I don't think so. No. So Europe has spent 170 billion euros of military and financial aid so far.
That really goes down well with Europeans.
I'm sure. Exactly. Europeans. That's 170 billion.
I mean, she's proud of it. Okay.
Exactly. 170 billion has actually left the European Union. It's gone. More will be needed. And it should not only be European taxpayers who bear the brunt of this. This is Russia's war, and it is Russia that should pay. That is why we need to work urgently on a new solution to finance Ukraine's war effort on the basis of the immobilized Russian assets. So they're still talking about this, some way that they can make use of these assets without finding themselves in courts for
yeah, well, maybe Russia will go to war with Belgium over it.
Yes. And it says, with the cash balances associated to these Russian assets, we can provide Ukraine with a reparations loan. The assets themselves will not be touched, and the risk will have to be carried collectively.
Collective. Oh yeah, here we go.
But you see, when they say the risk have
That's
to
good. That's another one of those. Okay, you first. You first.
exactly, but the risk will have to be carried collectively. Well, that means you're going to essentially EU taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab for this money. I mean, that's it. You will have to be carried collectively because sooner or later, someone's going to have to cough up this money. They're going to have to produce this money, and then says, "Well, the European Union taxpayers." Ukraine will only pay back the loan once Russia pays for the reparations.
Yeah,
Um, this is just such utter nonsense.
just
Um, but the money will help Ukraine already today, but it will also be crucial in the mid and long term for Ukraine's security. So this belligerent talk. Um, that Putin's war economy will not stop even if the war does. This means Europe must be ready to take responsibility for its own security. Of course, NATO will always be essential, but only a strong and credible European defense posture will be able to guarantee our security. We have made historic progress in recent years to build a European defense union, and so on. So this is the what we're getting from Europe these days. This. We talked Sikorski, no fly zone. Then we have this the State of the Union, and I have no idea what they're trying. I mean, they're just hoping that something or other will provoke some kind of a crisis, and then Trump will be pressured finally
but
to.
that's not a strategy. That's not a
No,
strategy.
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's
When there's no strategy, the only thing you have left is hope. And
yes, I
don't
think
go
so.
to the bank. They can't go to the bank on hope. Sorry.
Well, no, I think it's the Mr. McCorber strategy. Something will turn up. It's always how are you going to survive? Well, something will turn up. Maybe tomorrow. We'll get lucky. Um, but you could just see here there are opportunities here to bring this to an end. You could say you could just bring it to an end. There's diplomacy. Clearly, Trump isn't interested in this war. And so therefore, this could be an opportunity to basically just bring
Well,
this
yeah.
to an end.
All the
No, that's the last thing. No, we have to stop it. We have to do something to stop this, bringing it to an end.
it's very telling with the truth that you showed us all. That's it's demonstrating that Trump, in his mind, isn't going to be made or it won't make or break him. This thing, it's not
Right.
his. Okay,
Right.
and so you can criticize him all he wants, and he's telegraphed very clearly. No, if this is so important to Western security, then it has to be a collective thing, and the Europeans aren't up to snuff to do it. So good luck, everybody. I think that's his message right now, because he doesn't want you lost Ukraine, but he's telling way in advance before Ukraine is lost. Like,
Right.
see, he's actually memorializing this
Yes.
in real time.
Yes. No, no, that's exactly right. Because you're absolutely right. He says, I'm not going to be saddled with blame for it. Yeah, because basically, that's why he keeps saying it isn't my war. Um, it's interesting also the way he put it. He said um, it's Biden and Zelensky's war. Uh,
Mm.
he's always said it's Biden's war. This is the first time he's actually said it is Biden and Zelensky's war. So he said, hey, I'm just trying to stop this. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the um, comments from our locals board. These are the people who basically they worry about the dogs. They think that the dogs are getting very, very angry and frustrated, and therefore they say, well, what can we do in order to reassure them that everything in the world is fine, and everything is onward and upward. So thank you very much, everybody who's chipped in. And Stone River, thank you so much, Stone River. He says, how do you see Trump's presidency evolving in years 2, 3, and 4. He seems to be losing the plot. Okay, Peter, you want to think about that, or
Yeah, I mean, initially, and George and I talked about this a lot. They came out gangbusters. I mean, the executive orders. I mean, immigration, trade. I mean, they full steam ahead. Now it's that steam seems to have dissipated in some areas. Others like deploying the U.S. military in American cities, which I think is awful. He's very much looking more inward, okay? Because I think the way George and I have kind of formulated it is that, like the Middle East, just let the Israelis take care of it. That's how, Trump is very much like, what do we got them for? Okay, I mean, just they have our backing, okay? Because he doesn't really want to focus on that. He doesn't want to focus on Ukraine, obviously. I think because of people like Marco Rubio, which he apparently, I would imagine, sees a lot. It's really Venezuela is what we really know, and
right,
that's an easy win. That's easy. That's easy.
right,
Okay,
right.
and so I don't really see a real coherent foreign policy. But to change American foreign policy, it's not easy. Okay, it's like turning an aircraft. Someone told me once it takes 25 miles for an aircraft carrier to turn around. That's a long way. Okay,
Right. Right.
um, and we have to keep in mind Trump was thwarted in his first administration. We don't know what kind of resistance he's receiving now. I think it's very hard to kind of put into context really now what's going on, because everything, at least the way we receive it, a lot of it seems like on the fly.
Right.
But I think the attack on Iran was very well planned. I mean, it was Trump, obviously, the administration knew the attack on Doha was going to happen. That is very clear. But you don't get the impression that is top of mind for this administration. I don't know what is top of mind for this administration.
Well, that's right. Now, the question is, what happens in years 2, 3, and 4? Well, of course,
Well, if we can't understand it now, I don't know how
right,
we're going to.
exactly. So, and a lot depends on events. I mean, what is going to happen? It
Well,
does.
the thing is, Trump isn't getting his way. He's not
He's
getting
not
his
getting
way
his way.
with
No.
China. He's not getting his way with Russia. He's not getting his way
Right.
with India.
Right.
Okay.
But when it comes to China, I think he is going to sign the trade deal. I think that's going to come. I mean, because
It's
both the
in,
United States and China want to do business with each other, and when businessmen want to do business with each other, they do business. I mean, it's like there's going to be a lot of hard negotiation. But today, for instance, there's the news broke that there's a deal over TikTok. They seem to work something out. I mean, China is very pragmatic. I mean, they like doing business. I think they don't like getting into serious conflict. So I think there will be some kind of a deal, and I think the same thing will happen with India. I think that's just with these tariffs, they're always going to work something out. The Ukraine, I think, is a much more difficult one, because that's there. It's hard to see how it can be worked out. I mean, Trump's problem is, as we said, he's not interested really in Ukraine. I mean, he said it's not my war. It just doesn't interest me at all. If it's anybody's war, it's the Europeans' war. On the other hand, the Europeans neither have the ability to fight it, nor do they have the ability to leave it well alone. I mean, it's like they refuse to do any fighting or make any sacrifices, but they don't refuse just simply to wash their hands of it. So they
yeah,
still.
and that's a choice. And that's a
Yeah,
choice.
that's a choice, and that's why it's so difficult to deal with them, because on one they keep demanding something from him, while at the same time they're refusing just to let it go. I mean, just simply say, okay, we have no further interest in this,
Exactly.
and that's the worst possible outcome, is when somebody just continues to wage this war while not really having the ability to do so. And
And
so,
not having a strategy. What's the end game? They don't have
well,
any.
the end game is itself, which is to keep the war going. I mean, that's all the end game is. I mean, just to keep it going. They have no other goal in mind, just to to keep it going and keep the United States engaged. And almost certainly they're thinking in terms of, hey, if we can keep it going for another 3 years, Trump will be gone, and who knows, who will take over. 3 years is a long time. I mean, it's like, well, a lot can happen in 3 years.
A lot
Um,
can happen. Look what happened last week, everyone.
yeah,
A lot can happen. A
right,
lot can.
right. So, but that I think that's why it's so difficult for Trump, because he's got Zelensky. He just wants, oh, give me more, which obviously annoys Trump. And then you've got the Europeans who say, yeah, we got to keep this going. But we're not prepared really to sacrifice anything. You're the one who has to make the sacrifices. Um, so I think it's Ukraine's strategy is just, well, keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, just keep,
Well, and
not just not make a decision.
if the Europeans want to fill up the coffers in Kiev, I mean, I'm sure the Zelensky crowd has nothing against that. The war is lost, and I think it's as usual. It ends up being just a grift. Okay, if the paychecks are coming through, let's keep cashing them. And
Right.
then when the checks stop coming, then we cash out and we leave. Okay, and
Right.
then let the Ukrainians that are left pick up the pieces.
Right.
That's how I think that's how cynical these people are.
Right, right. But I think it could certainly go on for quite some
You know,
time. I
I
mean, I
mean,
think,
George and I have talked about this many times. The last legs. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, 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 yeah,
we've stayed way away
yeah.
from.
Right, right. I know. I mean, every time I look at the menu on YouTube, I see all these these podcasts. Last legs. It's almost over. It's game time. In Kiev and so on. I mean, just one after another, and it's like, yeah, but you've been saying the same thing for 3 years. So, um, so I guess that you'd have to say that, but domestically, it's going to be quite interesting because, of course, he's in a fight against the courts, and that's a long, protracted fight. But the issue, I think, of law and order, that works to his advantage. Whether you know in bringing in the National Guard in cities. Well, you can do it in DC. Not such a great idea to bring it in other cities, but certainly you can do it in DC. But it works to Trump's advantage because this is something people care really passionately about, and that. Uh, the shot of that woman being
Oh,
stabbed
God,
so
sure.
horribly. I mean, that was that shocked the nation, and it was shocking that
Yeah, it
was
didn't shock mainstream media, and
no,
that's what it
exactly
even more
mainstream media
shocking.
exactly the mainstream media had tried to bury the story, and it really only came out quite inadvertently, but. Law and order works to his advantage. You're not going to lose votes.
Well, I
Um,
didn't vote in 1968, but it worked in '68.
it worked in '68, and but even though it's, I mean, in this case, I mean, Trump has now made this a federal issue because in '68, Nixon talked about law and order, but it wasn't really a federal issue, but Trump has now made this a federal issue. Um, so but that I mean that's I think he domestically I think doing much is much
Yeah,
stronger
because he has
than
like yeah,
in
because he has
foreign
people like
policy.
People like Stephen Miller around him. I
Yeah,
mean, this guy is a warrior. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
this guy is unrelenting. He doesn't have any foreign policy talent
no,
at
he doesn't
all.
have, yeah, no, no,
Zero,
none,
zero.
no, zero, yeah, yeah,
Stephen Miller, this guy, he doesn't sleep. Okay,
yeah,
because
yeah,
there's another thing that keeps him up. Okay,
right, right,
that is not. I'm not endorsing him. Okay,
right.
as a wheeler and dealer.
No,
And
I look. I don't. No, this is a true believer. No,
yes,
I mean, he's I mean, he's a very very strong-minded person, and he really is setting the administration agenda. I mean, I mean, on issue after issue, you think this sounds like Stephen Miller. I mean, it's like,
Take
where,
no
where is this
prisoners,
coming
Stephen
from?
Miller.
Yeah,
Take no prisoners.
right. Anyway, anyway, thank you so much, Stone River. Cynthia, always good to see you, Cynthia. Thank you so much. And Cynthia asks, what if the civilian killed in the Israeli attack on Doha was an American? A scenario which is quite conceivable. After all, 10,000 US soldiers work at Al Udeid Air Base, many of whom live off base and have children there. And since the base is only about 45 minutes away from the place where Hamas officials met, one of the victims of the attack could easily have been an American or even an American child. So, if that were to happen, would Trump still not condemn Israel's deadly strike in Doha? Well,
I
that's
don't
a
think
yeah.
I don't think he would have condemned it.
I don't think so either. I think that even if it had been an American, I think. I mean, I think you make a very good point, Cynthia. I think it would probably have been covered up. They would have said, that it was a Qatari who had been killed. So they would have covered it up, because if it had been an American killed, it would have been embarrassing. But on the other hand, I mean, we've had so many occasions in which Americans have been killed in the West Bank and Gaza, and the U.S. government, after sort of banging its fist on the table, demanding an accounting, and we care passionately about what happens to Americans abroad, they kind of more or less just let it go. When Israel announces, "Oh, we thoroughly investigated this, and we found no wrongdoing
It
on
was a
the
ricochet.
IDF soldier."
It was a ricochet.
Everyone did exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've had this over and over again. I mean, recently, what was it? We had an American beaten to death, and then even Huckabee seemed a little perturbed by this. The settlers beating an American to death. But he seems to have forgotten, as he hugs and Bibi
He's very much
Netanyahu.
like he's very much like Piers Morgan. Okay.
He's the sort of the
In
Piers
one
Morgan.
ear, out the other. After the program, delete, start all over again.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, we did a whole podcast on how Huckabee seems to be getting fed up with Israel, because it was one thing after another, one open insult to the United States after another, and Huckabee had to somehow address this. I mean, it was an attack on a Christian church, an attack on an American beaten to death.
Not giving visas to American
Not giving
Zionists.
visas to evangelical Zionists, and yet everything just continues as before. There he is, leaning
Out of
on
the wall. Let's hang out at the wall.
That's right. Let's hang out of the wall. I think that even if that had happened, I don't think it would make any difference.
That's how pathetic it is.
Right. I can't remember. Has there been an occasion when Americans really got upset about some, Israelis killing an American? I don't remember. Maybe there was any time, but I mean, we've had so many over the years, and I don't remember the U.S. government ever making much of a fuss about it. Anyway, thank you so much, Cynthia. And then she goes.
Don't make much of a fuss when an American journalist is arrested and thrown into the pokey.
No.
What were they?
No, they got Gonzalo Lira.
The consular service helping him out. Nope.
Yeah. It's, anyway, Cynthia then goes on. Either way, obviously, Trump is totally clueless about Israel and its Hannibal directive. Otherwise, he'd know that Israel has no respect at all for any human life, including their very own.
He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear it.
He doesn't want to hear it.
He doesn't want to hear it.
But the other aspect of it is this.
Rachel Corey, thank you.
Rachel Corey, exactly. Rachel Corey. Yeah. But if you think about Trump And if you were to tell him about the Hannibal Directive, he might say, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Maybe we should have a Hannibal Directive of our own." Basically, yeah. I mean, we're not going to allow our people to be captured, so we just take matters into our own hands. So, I mean, we've seen pictures of Trump together with Bibi, and he kind of looks at Bibi with these kind of adoring eyes, um, which is, I mean, just like in that picture where he's pulling up a chair for Bibi to sit down on. It's utterly contemptible. This is you're the United States. This is Israel, and you're pulling up a chair
Well,
where Bibi's going to
maybe
sit.
I just don't know how deep Trump thinks about these things, but Netanyahu, for the time being, has international immunity. Trump would kind of like that, because he's always saying, "I'm the president of the United States. This will be done." He likes that. Okay, he doesn't like any nuances. Okay, I don't know if
Right.
you saw I saw it this morning. He was speaking in front of the press, still alive, everyone. That smart people don't like me. You know,
He
I don't know
said
if you saw
small people.
smart people don't like me.
Right. Um, yeah. I mean, I think he has he likes. I mean, he likes Bibi. I think he likes the personality type.
He may be the
Um,
only personality type. Excuse me.
the
Go ahead.
personality he has there was a certain kind of person that he always gets on well with, and like Putin, I think he genuinely likes Putin. I think he has a fondness for him, and so I think that there is that. But the Israelis, I think, is the special case, and I think, yeah, if you were to ask him, hey, what about this Hannibal Directive? I think you say, hey, that's a fantastic idea. I'm going to see. I'm going to ask Pete Hegseth whether the U.S. Army can institute its own version of the Hannibal Directive. So
He has Pete Hegseth has a speed dial on his phone. Midnight hammer. Okay, 'cause he's hammered at midnight.
exactly. So, um,
Just
and
look at
then
his
since
face. Come on, everybody. Just look at him. Okay, he's hammered all the time. Okay.
yes, I think somebody once said, if you're too drunk for Fox News, you must be really drunk. I mean, Fox News has an enormous
Remember when Judy?
tolerance for
Remember when
alcoholism.
Rudy Giuliani was on?
Exactly, show up in the studio absolutely
He
hammered.
was on Laura Ingraham, and he was smashed. He was smashed. I mean, he had at least 6 scotches before. Okay,
Yes.
I mean, even Laura Ingraham. Maybe you got to slow down a little bit. You shouldn't be saying this on national television. He
Yes.
was smashed.
Yes, but I think, I mean, there are other people who just kind of show up on Fox News, and they've had one too many. But yeah, Rudy was a classic hit, because I think he did it a couple of times. Kind of showed up with absolutely drunk out of his mind. Anyway, Cynthia goes on. And what about the RAF tanker flying in circles around Doha during the attack? Perhaps the UK was refueling the Israeli fighter jets.
Yes, they were.
That's yeah. If that's confirmed, it certainly shows a collaboration between Israel and the UK, and that the attack was planned well in advance. Also, what about U.S. air defenses over Qatari airspace? How could they have been
Stand
turned
down
off?
order. Stand down order.
It was a stand down. Otherwise, absolutely would have automatically would have gone into a defensive mode. If any intrusion into Qatari airspace, the United States would have gone into attack mode. Um, yeah, exactly. You can't just simply, given this huge base that the United States has there, Israel can just fly 10 military aircraft, enters Qatari airspace, drops its load, and then flies out again. And the U.S. air defenses didn't do anything. It's ridiculous. Um, and that the attack was planned well in advance. Also, what about U.S. air defenses over Qatari airspace. How could they have been turned off prior to the attack without the United States knowing about it? Yeah, I suppose the US has empowered the Israelis to turn them off should the need arise. So they obviously knew that the attack was coming. The only issue was at what point did they notify Trump? Because they had to allow for plausible deniability. That's always the key. You have to allow the president plausible deniability, in other words, so that Trump can say, "Well, I didn't know. I was just notified that this attack is happening, and I got on. I told Steve Witkoff, hey, you better get in touch with the Qataris and warn them about this impending attack." And then, lo and behold, the bombs have already been dropped by the time the phone call went through to Doha. So, but I think they had to just keep Trump himself, the president himself, insulated from this.
They didn't do a very good job of it.
No,
Okay.
no. What is still, I guess, the aspect of it that is intriguing is we know why Israel does this. Right? We don't have to go into that. But how does it benefit Trump that Hamas were just meeting to discuss his own peace plan, and then they get killed while they're discussing his peace plan? How does that benefit Trump? That's the part that I think is a head scratcher. I don't get how it benefits him. Because he, I mean, if you're looking for your Nobel Peace Prize, then probably colluding in attacks on your on negotiators of your peace plan, it may, that may not be the best way to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, well, he's going to have to go. I don't know how many wars he's claimed to have ended, 7 or 8 or maybe 10 by now. I don't know. But those are not going to get him any kind of prize. There's no way in the world Donald Trump is ever going to get that prize. But, I don't really care one way or another. It is completely discredited. So just, who cares? He wants it because Obama got it. That's it. Nothing more.
But you're absolutely right. But of course, when Obama got it, it was a total fraud. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, what did he get it for? He got it in his
because
first year in
George
office.
W. Bush.
Because he wasn't George W. Bush.
You can criticize Kissinger for getting it, but he did negotiate the end of the war.
I've never criticized Kissinger because I think the qualification to get the Peace Prize was not that you have devoted your whole life to peace, but that you negotiated a peace agreement. I think that was fair enough. And it wasn't just Kissinger; it was the other guy as well, Lee Duc-Tho. Yeah, who negotiated with Kissinger. They both got it was a joint Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, when de Klerk, F.W. de Klerk, and Nelson Mandela, they both got a Nobel Peace Prize. It doesn't matter. Well, but F.W. de Klerk, he was a pillar of the apartheid establishment for years and years. Okay, but in this case, they negotiated the end of apartheid. So it doesn't matter what you did before. I mean, so therefore, you deserve a.
What it does is it sends out a demonstration effect. I mean, if you really set your mind to it and create a peaceful resolution of something, it doesn't matter how bad you are. If you do it, that's what counts. That's what counts.
Right. That's right. And then, but Bustalo Maserati says Obama got it because he was cool. I do think that's quite a good point, because that was the Obama issue. I mean, if you go back, it's a long time ago now, 2009, 2010, the Obama mania that gripped the world because, hey, he's cool. He's black and he's kind of thin, tall, and he kind of talks in this cool way. People thought, oh, this is fantastic. He's this cool guy. And without ever really, but what is he about? What does he really think? What's he trying to accomplish? He's a cool guy.
For George and myself, it was the empty suit presidency.
Total empty suit. There's, absolutely nothing at all. I mean, Bill Clinton had a little bit of that, but the thing with Clinton was that even as he arrived into the presidency, he was already carrying baggage, because, everyone knew, yeah, but what about all the bimbo eruptions and,
Well,
all
someone put, I know we're rapidly running out of
yeah.
time, but someone put it to me once. I think I'm not agreeing with it, but I thought it was an interesting characterization. Bill Clinton, successful presidency, failed president. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't think it was. I
No,
think it
I
was just
mean,
yeah,
I know,
yeah,
they
right.
Yugoslavia. I know.
No, but even then,
Started.
he inherited a very easy
Yeah.
situation for him because that was the dot-com economy. I was just taking off with Silicon Valley, and then of course, there was no Soviet Union. I mean, it's gone. There was no adversary. It was an easy time to be a U.S. president. I mean, you'd have to be a bloody fool to fail in those circumstances. But anyway, we have run out of time. So thank you very much, everybody who joined us. Thank you very much for all of your comments and questions. Always very interesting. We always enjoy answering them. And the dogs, they'd like to see more in the tip jar, but they feel that their input is not appreciated. So that's why they keep
They're
a low
sleeping.
profile. Yeah, they're sleeping. They're keeping a low profile. We've done our best, and there it is. So thank you, everybody, and we will be back same time next Monday for our joint live stream. And then please join me tomorrow, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, for my solo live stream. Until then, all the best.